You ever rewatch something you loved as a kid, only to realize that certain parts of it just don't make any sense? Because that was me as I was rewatching The Spectacular Spider-Man. Don't get me wrong, The Spectacular Spider-Man is goated. Awesome. Top tier Spider-Man TV show. And when I was like 5 or 6, I loved watching Gwen and Peter together. It felt obvious, inevitable. It felt like the show's perfect slow burn romance. But rewatching it now, I had a very different reaction. For Gwen, the writing is great. Her arc makes total sense. Peter's arc, on the other hand, is basically 2 seasons of him doing everything humanly possible to avoid being with her, only for him to kind of almost end up with her in the end. And yet the show still wants us to believe that this love story is the one we're supposed to be rooting for the entire time. So for the next couple of weeks, we'll be discussing Spectacular Spider-Man romances. And today specifically, we'll be talking about how this romance works perfectly from one side, but falls apart the second you look at Peter's side.
You like Pete a lot, don't you?
On the surface, this seems like a pretty good idea. They're both nerds, they care for each other, they've known each other for the longest time, she's had a crush on him since the 7th grade, and she's kind of like the geek ed to his geek, or the nerd ed to his nerd. And to be honest, I really don't hate the ship. Even as a kid, I loved the idea of the two of them being together, because I could relate to Gwen. This character who's had this friend for the longest time, eventually starts to develop feelings for them, but doesn't know how to go about it. She's a little bit of a nerd, sort of shy, and doesn't know how to express those feelings, if they even should be expressed. She tries here and there to sort of hint to him that she likes him and would like them to be together. She wants to go to the fall formal with him, and initially tries to get him to ask her out, but then seemingly halfway through, she decides that I'm just gonna ask him out, only for him to miss every signal and for her to get shot down, accidentally. So at the time, Gwen was like my favorite character. She was easily the most relatable to me. And even though I initially started watching the series because of Spider-Man, Gwen was a huge part of the reason that I stuck around to watch it for all 2 seasons, before it was cancelled. But then again, back then, Will they wrote their romances were kind of like cocaine to me. Every fake out resulted in me having red eyes and twitching like the high didn't hit hard enough. But even to this day, although I may not like the ship, I don't think that 6-year-old me was that crazy to ship it. Because there actually is merit to the idea of this version of Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker being together. One thing I really like is the idea that Gwen will likely be the one to keep Peter grounded and remind him of who he is and what matters, like she did in episode 3 of season 1. For context, the Parker household is having some financial trouble. Pete wants to get photos for the Bugle. Gwen and Peter become apprentices for Dr. Kurt Connors, who accidentally turns himself into a lizard. He and Spidey fight, Spider-Man wins, Pete gets photos, roll credits. I like how this episode is very subtly framed to showcase Gwen's wisdom, as well as what she brings to Peter's life. Earlier in this episode, we get Pete complaining about all the issues in his life that he didn't ask for and frankly doesn't deserve. He starts off by complaining about money, but eventually reaches a point where he wishes away his intelligence because then he wouldn't be Flash's target for all the bullying. Gwen then stops him immediately, telling him not to wish away his beautiful big brain, wanting him to acknowledge his brain as a gift, which ties in very well with the overall theme of the episode. Because, as always, the biggest victim of Spider-Man's antics is Peter Parker. By the end of the episode, Peter is having issues in his personal life. Because he's Spider-Man, he's always out late, so May gave him a strict 10 p.m. curfew. And because he seemingly picked money over helping his friends, they all think he's scum. Although I'll agree that taking pictures in this scenario was not the best idea. But the episode ends with Peter being a second away from removing his powers completely, and then remembering why he does what he does. Remembering the fact that he saved them, the fact that Billy gets his father back, remembering that his powers are a gift that enable him to do so much good, the same way that Gwen wanted him to remember that his intellect is also a gift. If he ended up with Gwen and she knew that he was Spider-Man, she could be the one to remind him of all the good that he does, to always look on the bright side of things, and be a shoulder to cry on when his powers just genuinely fuck up his life. Because that's often the dilemma with Spider-Man. The powers allow him to do great things and save lives, but they often result in Peter Parker's life being awful because he's flaky, late, unreliable, and just seems like a bad friend most of the time, leaving him sad and heartbroken. Gwen could be his rock, his home, the place he goes to, and being Spider-Man is just too much. Because she loved him before he was Spider-Man. She loved Peter Parker. I love how as the show progresses, we get to see Gwen's behavior towards Peter change as those feelings grow. It goes from her just looking at him with longing eyes to him becoming her only thought when Harry leaves, and then finally for MJ to give her that push she needed to take the leap. I like this. I really do. Because Gwen goes from waiting on the sidelines for something to happen, hoping that he will one day notice her, just longing after her crush, to getting a push from her friends and the universe to finally kiss Peter in a fantastic first season finale to a spectacular show. This was perfect. Until we got the single worst line in the entire show.
We know who you love the most.
That one line and everything that happens afterwards in order to try and justify it is the one part of the ship that had me wanting to scream at my TV every moment I thought about it. And a little bit right now. Because no, up until this point, Peter didn't love Gwen. He didn't see her romantically, and she was not the person that he loved the most. And the show can't lie to me to tell me that he did. This is a case where I can see what the writers are going for, but the execution is so clumsy that the writers' plan for how to get these two together ends up being exactly why they shouldn't end up together. The idea is quite simple. While Peter was busy chasing all these other girls, the best girl was by his side, quietly supporting him. But he loved her from the very beginning but just didn't know it. Which honestly is a fine idea. I've seen it done before, and although it's quite predictable, a story like that can be quite entertaining if it's well executed. But the problem here is that there's no build-up to this on Peter's side of things. He starts the series crushing on Sally Averill. In episode 2, he's busy turning on the charm with Liz Allen. In episode 4, he's crushing on Betty Brant. In episode 6 and 7, he's got his sights set on MJ. In episode 8, Liz is back. And where is Gwen through all of this? Nowhere. Gwen isn't even a thought. He only really thinks about her when she brings up the fact that their friend may just be a drug addict. Every interaction that these two have throughout the entire first season is written to be platonic on Peter's side. I get that they wanted that to signal that he doesn't know that he likes her, but no, there's just no build-up throughout the entire season. You don't need to have him confess or even realize that he likes her. Just have moments where it seems like the two of them might end up together and he might actually consider it, instead of him just completely seeing her as a friend and nothing else the entire time. He doesn't even consider her as a potential date for the dance when Betty turns him down. Because in Peter's mind, he needs to go to the dance with someone he's romantically interested in, which is a criterion that immediately disqualifies Gwen. It would have been better if the writers had at least given them the dance. That way you could have Pete see this as him just having fun with a friend, and Gwen sees this as her spending time with her crush. Until that last slow song puts them together, and maybe have that be a memory that Peter cherishes and can't get out of his head or something. We as the audience could then point to that as the moment when Peter started to see his best friend as more than just a friend. You don't even necessarily need Gwen to be his date for the dance. You could just have Gwen walk up to him after he sees MJ dancing with Rand, and have the two of them enjoy the last song of the dance together. But no, we get exactly one line of build-up that Pete likes Gwen exactly 12 minutes before she kisses him at the end of a 13-episode season. Yeah? The worst part about all of this isn't the lack of build-up, or how shockingly little chemistry Gwen and Pete actually have, or this god-awful line. It's what happens after season 1. What exactly am I talking about? Nothing. Yes, you heard me. Nothing. Nothing happens. He realizes he likes her. She kisses him. Just a small signal that she may just be interested. And then nothing happens for an entire fucking season. Okay, full disclosure. Initially, I was actually behind this idea because of one detail that I feel is both overhyped and underdiscussed. Peter Parker got game. And no, for this series, this isn't a case of Spider-Man getting laid all the time while Peter Parker is just a socially awkward guy who's just trying to avoid getting stuffed in a locker. The Spectacular Spider-Man genuinely gave us a webhead with Riz. So much so that he's actually got enough left over to help out his fellow nerds. So I kinda like this angle of him being shy when it comes to Gwen. She's the one he really wants, so he's tongue-tied. I mean, it's predictable, but once again, if the execution is great, I'm not about to complain. But the execution sucked, so I'm complaining. Because, look, I like this idea. Up to a point. But this show ran so far past that point, all you can see is it shrinking in the distance. Because yes, Peter Parker got game. Yes, Peter Parker likes Gwen. Yes, Peter Parker can't use any of that game to get her. That has the potential to be interesting. However, Peter starts this series by asking out Sally Averill, a girl he's had a crush on for years. He starts the series taking charge of his life and going after the things that he wants, no matter how awkward he feels about it. I understand him feeling awkward about this. He's been friends with Gwen for years. That switch from friend to potential girlfriend is not a quick one. But making it so that he just never addresses it was a bad call. Pete should have initially been feeling awkward because A, Gwen is his friend, and 2, she's the one he actually likes. But eventually deciding that he cares about Gwen and wants this relationship to happen. So he goes out and asks her, "Will you be my girl?" But instead of giving us one of the few 2000s cartoon romances that actually make sense, they decided to milk this drama for all it was worth. Enter Liz Allen.
Geekitude is contagious.
I don't mind catching what Petey's got.
Alright, so I'm gonna be posting a full video about Liz and Peter's relationship tomorrow. Therefore, I won't be spending that much time on them as a couple in this video. But I will say this. Liz was great. She was the bully turned love interest, a tale as old as time. Fantastic. However, as it pertains to this video, I hate the love triangle between Peter, Liz, and Gwen. Not just because it's a love triangle, but, partially, but because of the way that it's written and how Peter's character is dragged through the mud every second that this plotline rears its ugly head. Peter and Gwen haven't talked about the kiss yet, because Peter just doesn't know what to do. Because while Gwen is waiting to hear how Peter feels about her, Liz has gotten very flirty with him, and this just leaves poor Peter Parker unsure of what to do. Eventually, Liz makes her move and asks Peter to be her boyfriend. He accepts and they're dating, and Gwen finally gets her answer. She later starts dating Harry, which turns this love triangle into an onion. Not that it's got layers, but that it made me cry. Kill me. Before we get into this, I do actually want to give some props. I love how Gwen is handled throughout all of this nonsense. I like how realistic her character is and how her behavior, actions, and attitude change as a result of everything that's happened so far. Like what happened at the ice rink before Peter started dating Liz and Gwen was still waiting for her answer. Despite the fact that she's had a crush on the guy since forever and actually wants to be his girlfriend, Gwen puts him in his place when he tries to pretend that things are good between the two of them. Because in fact, no. She kissed you, you ignored it, and you're now flirting with the other girl. She also clearly tells him that as much as she wants to be with him, she will not be his second choice. And as much as I don't like the fact that Gwen starts dating Harry later, essentially making him the rebound guy, I like that it's made clear through Gwen's reactions that she isn't really into Harry. Because while I don't condone using anyone as a rebound, please do not do this, it is stupid. The show never frames this as Gwen doing this to hurt Peter or knowingly hurting Harry. She'll longingly look at Peter when she's with Harry, but it's never made to seem as if it's her saying, "Look what you're missing out on," or something just as bitter. Harry also isn't really made to be the victim here, even though this man Loki had more reason to hate Peter than Venom did. Because as soon as he and Gwen started dating, it seems less like she's someone that Harry really loves and cares for, and more like something for him to show off about. He immediately starts calling Norman to tell him that he's got a girlfriend, in hopes that Daddy will love him. Not that he's dating Gwen, but that he's got a girlfriend. As much as Harry was being used as a rebound here, Gwen herself was being used as a prize, which for me is what makes her remain sympathetic throughout all of this. She kissed her crush of 3 years. He ignored it and went on to date another girl. She went on to date another guy. That guy, from her perspective, wants her because of what it says about him, not because he really likes her. So even though Gwen literally has nothing going on in her life besides the boys and all that drama, she's written as a hurt and confused teenager in a way that I honestly find quite relatable. Because who hasn't been lost and screwed up as a teenager in love? Unfortunately though, the same cannot be said about Peter Benjamin Parker, despite what the writers would like you to believe. Now, to be honest with you, I'm getting a little sick of saying this, but I like the idea that the writers had here because I think it would have led to something quite interesting. However, the execution had me wanting Peter to die alone. The writers wanted Peter to be a teenage boy and do teenage boy things, which is a polite way of saying Peter thinks with his dick. From the get-go, Peter, like Harry, wants a girlfriend because he wants a girlfriend. There's really nothing more to it. He's a teenage guy and he wants a hot girl around his arm. That's it. Which is why he ends up having so many crushes, is so flirtatious, and is such a goddamn idiot. This idea is phenomenal, and the execution in some areas is actually quite good. Like when he celebrates the fact that he's got a girlfriend, he celebrates the fact that he's got a girlfriend, not the fact that he's with the person he likes, not the fact that he's dating the girl that he likes. He's a teenage boy. I like the idea. Over time, we can have Peter learn that this line of thinking is wrong, and boom, the two of them are together. However, and this is a very small detail, he never actually learns that lesson. And at first, I thought that maybe this was because the show got cancelled. Apparently, they were going to have 5 seasons, but due to some rights issues between Marvel, Sony, and Disney, the show got canned. But as I started looking at the writing and the framing of Gwen and Peter's relationship, I started to realize that having more seasons would not have fixed this. The idea is that Peter eventually learns, like any guy, that he shouldn't want a girl just because she's hot and wants a girlfriend. But if he wants to be with someone, it should be because of her and who she is, and deciding that he wants her in his life, not that he wants a girl in his life. But throughout season 2, the point where you really get the feeling that Peter just wants a girl for the sake of having a girl, there's not much, if any, pushback against this idea. Every conversation that Peter has about his love life is about the fact that he should decide what he wants. He should decide which girl it is that he wants, be honest with both them and himself about what he wants and go after it. And by the end of the season, we're supposed to feel bad for him because he finally realized and was honest with himself about what he wants, only for that to be off the table. It's a good way of making us feel bad for the character, but it doesn't really tie into this idea that he needs to learn that he doesn't just have a girlfriend in his life for the sake of having a girl in his life. It should be someone he cares about, someone he actually wants to be with. Not because he wants to be with someone, but because he wants that person in his life. He wants more of that energy in his life. Which is why I feel that more seasons wouldn't have fixed this. Because the idea of that final episode is that in a perfect world, Peter and Gwen would be together. Not in a perfect world, Peter will have learned his lesson. The writing was just pulling Pete in 2 different directions. On one hand, he's a teenage guy who just wants a girlfriend. But on the other hand, he's also a guy who isn't realizing which girl he actually likes. Which seems like 2 ideas that connect, but not really. Because one requires him to learn what it means to be in a relationship with someone, and the other requires him to learn what it is he wants in a relationship and which girl he actually likes. I don't know if that last part made sense or not, but yeah. The writing for Peter when it comes to his love life is just awful. And it gets so much worse the moment he starts dating Liz. Because the exact moment that he starts dating Liz and Gwen starts dating Harry is the exact moment where they start really pushing Gwen and Peter together. Why? Drama. Honestly, it cannot be understated just how terrible this whole situation between Gwen, Peter, Liz, and Harry was. Like, it went from Peter is romantically interested in Liz, Gwen likes him, but Peter doesn't like her back. Everything is completely platonic. To Gwen is the person that Peter loves the most. She kisses him. They don't talk about it. They both start dating different people. They still don't talk about it. But then all of a sudden, they're all good. Then the 2 of them almost kiss when hiding from reporters, only to be interrupted by a call that they get from Liz and Harry. This shit is stupid. It's drama for the sake of it, and none of the characters come out of this looking good. Especially not Peter, because it wasn't bad enough for Peter to almost cheat on Liz. But now, on top of the writing trying to make Peter look like a teenage boy in that he just wants a girlfriend for the sake of having a girlfriend, at certain points he's also made to seem extremely shallow, which makes me question the entire thing between him and Gwen. Making it seem as if it's not that he likes her because she's his best friend, he's known her for years and really cares about her, but because she's hot now. So now it's time to discuss the infamous Valentine's Day episode. During this episode, Gwen, Peter, Liz, and Harry all go on a double date. When Peter arrives, he meets Harry outside and talks to him for a bit before Gwen shows up. And when she steps out of the car, we get introduced to a version of Gwen that has had a complete makeover. Side note, I've never really been a fan of Gwen's new look. She just looks like every other girl in the series now, which makes her stand out a bit less, and the nerdy aesthetic just made her look a bit more unique when compared to every other girl in the series, but whatever. When Gwen arrives, the boys are amazed. Especially Peter. So much so that he calls her an angel. in front of her boyfriend, while his girlfriend is inside, watching this happen. This episode was the nail in the coffin for me. Peter spends most of the evening just staring at Gwen, almost completely ignoring his girlfriend Liz, who is sitting right next to him. And when he later has to leave to go do Spider-Man things, instead of kissing his girlfriend goodbye, because he is in fact leaving her on Valentine's Day, he says goodbye to Gwen. Bro, this is the type of shit that has people cringing 10 years into the future. Because not only is he leaving on Valentine's Day, not only is he not kissing her, he's staring at Gwen. He's focused on Gwen during all of this. And on the subject of all that staring, that's part of why I believe that Peter never actually loved Gwen. Because this episode is the point where it starts to really feel as if Peter is genuinely interested in dating Gwen. And it coincides with the time when Gwen's look changed completely. I think the writers leaned a bit too heavily on the idea of Peter just being a normal teenage boy, without actually considering how it would affect the audience's perception of why he likes Gwen. Because this idea of Peter starting to notice Gwen when she's had a makeover is fine. Like, the idea is that he's starting to see her differently, not just as his friend, but as a girl. However, when you combine what happens in this episode with Peter's actions throughout the series, with him describing Betty as a hot 20-year-old, or him focusing on how beautiful MJ is while she's trying to give him advice, and him deciding to date Liz after she kissed him, but not doing the same when Gwen kissed him, all of this just makes it seem as if Peter is interested in her because she's hot now. I don't think it was the writer's intention to make Peter seem this shallow, but them just trying to lean so much into him being a teenage boy and him just wanting a girlfriend because he wants a girlfriend and him wanting that girl to be hot now just leads to this weird feeling of Gwen changed her look, and that coincided with Peter changing his behavior. It all just makes the character seem a lot more shallow than he actually is, and I don't think it was intentional, because once again, nobody ever pushes against this idea. Nobody ever sits down with Peter and says, bro, you should like them for the person that they are, not just because they're hot and they kissed you. And I honestly hate how all of this ends. In the final episode, Aunt May walks up to Peter and says to him, you need to be honest with both of these girls about what it is that you want, which means that you need to be honest with yourself about what it is that you want. And this is supposed to be the push that he needed to realize that he loves Gwen, not Liz. But after everything that's happened, like him being completely platonic with Gwen for the entire first season, him being interested in Liz for that first season, Gwen kissing him at the end of that season, him just not having that conversation with Gwen to say where they stand, and then Liz kissing him dating her, and then us never getting a reason for why he actually likes Gwen and not Liz. It just seems as if he's now interested in Gwen because she's pretty. And that just made me get really annoyed with Peter, to the point that when he finally talks to Gwen about that kiss, an entire season after the kiss actually happened, I was mad. In fact, I believe my exact words were,
Are you fucking kidding? After everything you put me through, you asshole!
or something along those lines. You know, generally speaking, Peter Parker is one of those characters that you just can't help but feel bad for. Everything from the dead parents, dead uncle, murder complex, Spider-Man just constantly ruining his life. He's one character that you just can't help but sympathize with. But in this show, when it came to all the romance drama, yeah, I couldn't feel bad for the guy. Like, he screwed it up himself. They wanted Peter to be your average teenage boy, meaning bro wants to get laid. But on the other hand, they wanted him to be this sympathetic, confused guy struggling to pick between two girls that he likes. Until when he finally does pick, he doesn't get what he wanted. But what they ended up doing is them leaning so far into the idea of him being a teenage guy who just wants to get laid, that when he finally does pick what is supposed to be the right girl, it seems like it's being done for the wrong reasons, which just removes any sympathy that I might have had for the guy. Because really, his love life is screwed up and he screwed it up himself. And so far, I've only talked about one of the many love interests that this guy had in this series. So, it's gonna be a fun couple of weeks. Tomorrow, I'll be dropping a new video about Peter and Liz. So make sure to subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified for when that happens. Until then, cheers!